Greetings everybody, welcome to a Marvel Avengers Alliance video here on G4G. Today, I got an idea for a video simply based off of a Facebook post. And I wanted to start a discussion with you guys, mostly because I see this topic come up a lot. And there's a lot of times where I just kind of wholesale disagree with it beyond a certain point. I think there is some truth to it, and on a scale of 1 to 10 I would maybe agree with it at like a 3 or a 4. But when people present it as a hard stone cold fact at like 9 or 10% on the intensity scale, I tend to really fight against it. So let me show you guys what spawned the idea for this video. There was a Facebook post today in the Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux group that said, "We loved it, we continued to play with it, but it was deeply flawed, pay to win. It had no concept of balance and a lot of frustrating moments throughout the years." Now, this statement, the author's name is there. I apologize, I'm not exactly going to blur it out. I don't really care who made the statement. I'm interested in the fact that the statement was made. Lots of frustrating moments throughout the years. Yes, we can all agree with this. We had the CVEs, which I'd kind of forgotten about until this thread. We had delays in getting PvP seasons, which amp up the tensions. We had PvP seasons extend because of issues, when a lot of people like myself, even if you were good at it, you just wanted the PvP to be done, because I found PvP to be stressful, even if I was doing well, even if I had a high meta team or a crazy napalm team. It didn't matter. This I agree with. We loved it and we continued playing it. Obviously, I agree with that. But deeply flawed, pay to win, and no concept of balance. There's 3 things there. Deeply flawed, I don't agree with at all. I'm like maybe at a 1 on that. Pay to win, I'm at a 3 or a 4 on the intensity scale. And no concept of balance, I purport back to this author that he has no concept of what balance is in games. So I'm going to share my response first, and then I'm going to jump into the video topic. My response is, I don't share this opinion beyond even 15 or 20%. Deeply flawed, pay to win. I don't think we'd be here today resurrecting a game that bore those qualities. And I think that's a very true statement. Why would anybody... Oh, I got a response while this is coming in. That's interesting. I don't think we'd be here today resurrecting a game that bore those qualities. I see his response is saying that they're irrespective of each other. He said the effort being put into resurrecting this game has nothing to do with the reality that it was. I think it does, because who would honestly care about a game that nobody cared about? I mean, think about that. If Goofy was trying to resurrect E.T. on the Atari, would we be here? Would anybody care? No, nobody would care. People care about resurrecting the games they love. That a community grows up around like a mushroom and is tight. Even if it circles the wagons at times, it's still a community with a whole bunch of wagons. So if it's deeply flawed, why would anybody care to have a resurrected game? Yes, we're fixing a lot of the flaws, and there will not be pay to win. I don't buy it. But anyway, there were not many items sold with the gold sales that were very pay to win. Lantern of Doom ranks among the highest, but they nerfed others to the point of massive complaints. The Heroes for Hire summoned PDA as an example. You remember that thing? A game cannot be pay to win when its paid items aren't very powerful. Concept of balance? Balance is always ebb and flow. Even games as large as WoW deals with it. Playdom made sure no meta existed for too long without a check in place. Too many melee scrappers in the mix shitting on your infiltrators? Here's a Huggin's eye. Tactician groups too strong? Nerf the tankard. Hate dealing with so many add-on attack groups like Spider-Man to War and Rocket Raccoon? Here's Heroic Age Iron Fist and the Rift Shank. Some metas are artificial and injected, meaning when a developer has to fix a meta by introducing another meta that counters it. Marvel Strike Force deals with that a lot. And some are natural and evolved, but no meta, be it in WoW, Marvel, Avengers Alliance, Overwatch, etc., lives forever. Literally no game dev allows it. When I see the Kurth bitching, I'm like, dots and bleeds, and I drop the mic and I walk away. I think PD devs suffered too much dislike from people who couldn't invent their own counters to the meta. They just expected somebody else to fix it for them. Before you mention it, that last statement is extremely arrogant, and I know myself well enough to know when I say something that's nice, excessively nice, arrogant, bitchy, or angry, or has no real basis in reality. I really do avoid those no basis in reality ones, and I know that last statement is super arrogant, but I stand by it. There wasn't a meta that I dealt with once I was good at the game that just stymied me to the point where I couldn't exert my will against it. And it didn't have anything to do with my gear. It didn't have anything to do with the money that I paid for it. It had to do with being inventive. X-Force Archangel and X-Force Psylocke is a team nobody really used, nobody saw coming, but it essentially beat the whole end 8th, 6th of the PvP teams towards the end of the games. They were a team that I used at one point in time, came away from, and was forced to go back to them like an old comfortable slipper, and then they worked because they walked around the meta. Don't tell me that's pay to win. Don't tell me that I paid to get that team. I mean, it's Psylocke and it's Archangel. I mean, come on. That's... Anyway, so the idea for this video is I wanted to go through the limited items, the items you could pay for gold and came with gold sales, and I wanted to talk about which ones were really good and could be considered pay to win and which ones were just shit. So we start off obviously with a good one, with the Coulson's Revenge. The Coulson's Revenge was super. It was a major part of early PvP and early PvP success. It had ignored defense and it penetrated the shield status. It granted coordinated attack. However, you needed to have one other Avenger or two Avengers to get really the best use out of it. Now, it was a good hitting weapon to begin with, true, but it needed extra work to really come into its own. And then it eventually showed up in spinners. As you can see... Oh, wait, was it? Yeah, Daily Mission. Here it is. It was part of the Thursday Daily Mission Roulette. So you could eventually get it. Yes, you could get it by the point where it wasn't that super necessary to have anymore. But you have to remember, any free-to-play game needs to make its money somehow. And again, you didn't have to pay for gold. There were ways of earning gold that didn't require shelling out your hard-earned cash for it. One of the ways you could do it was if a holiday was coming up or a birthday was coming up, you went in on Playdom's offers like 1-800-Flowers or something, like Mother's Day coming up, you want to send her a bouquet of flowers? Tie it into Marvel Avengers Alliance and get yourself 24 gold out of it for sending your mom flowers, which you were going to do anyway. That's how I did it for many years in the beginning of the game. Stark Industry, Isotope Cannon, Nowhere. The Beyond Corp Driver. I would give this one a bit of a minor, very minor pay to win. Mostly because of its good counterattack and everything. However, if you come down here and look at the Nin, which is what I was trying to remember in a previous video, the Nin is basically the same thing and adds a shield. And it came from PvP, and it came from incursions. So I don't really consider the Beyond Corp Driver that pay to win when there were things in the game that basically did similar stuff. No. 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 The Witch Hunter. This was handy. No, excuse me. The Hexenjäger was handy. Super on later in the game when magic became really strong because of the Pentecostal Oath. And this one could be subject to pay to win if you knew how to use it. But the Witch Hunter, okay, remove buffs. Big fat whoop. No big deal there. Chain Tonfa, like, why do we even want to talk about it? One of the scrolls, I mean, healing items, removing debuffs. Fucking Scroll of Uncle Bob removes the debuffs. Here's one. The rocket pistol. Bleeding and burning. Splash damage. Um, and then the fact that it always cost gold and it never showed up in the... Well, I do remember it being in the store. And it wasn't limited edition at that point. Yeah, here it is. So it was available, but it still cost gold. This was a very, very strong pistol, and there was a lot of good things you could do with this, and a lot of groups you can make around it. This one, I will say, is a little bit higher on the pay-to-win scale. This was a strong early item that was worth going into. Pawn, I mean, ammunition for the Rook, which was cool. Now we're getting into some Spec Ops items over here. Traumatic Post. This one was interesting in the fact that it was melee and psychic. And it did mental anguish, which is what Emma Frost did. So this one is pretty cool. It had a chance to counter single target attacks. If it countered with the mental anguish, this is actually strong, but nobody ever talked about the Traumatic Post. How pay to win was something that flew under everybody's radar. The Techno-Organic Fist. This one, yeah, this one was pretty strong. This had a lot of good usage. But as you can see here, it showed up several times. If it was always... Yeah, well, here it is. Showed up in the Daily Mission Roulette later on. So things may be pay to win for a little while, but a lot of times they eventually get off of the pay to win. Here, not much else is really much to write home about. The Loki Scepter was very, very strong because of that mind control, and I remember playing on the Playdom site where I had a lot of Loki Scepters, though. But look, here it was a daily reward. You could get it without the gold. So, yes, it started off as gold, but then it wasn't. So is it really pay to win? And I remember having tons of those on my Playdom website account. It was, somewhat fun in PvP. Soulfire Blade, Hex Wand. This was a sleeper. By the time people realized how strong this was, because of the probability field and everything, it was not a gold item anymore. People used this one later in the game for a few tricks, but it wasn't really that strong when it was actually up for gold. Now, Blade of the Guardian. Yeah, this one I can't argue. This one, when it was limited and it was gold only, this was a very, very strong weapon, and I just point to any Kingfisher video. Kingfisher loved his bog to death. It basically was on his agent at all times. It was on his agent like underwear. This one, I do admit, is probably one of the more pay-to-win items. It never really left its pay-to-win status because it never became available for anything other than gold. It did get cheaper, but it's not like you had a lot of access to the Blade of the Guardian. So yes, in 2012, we have one really big standout in Blade of the Guardian that managed to live throughout the entirety of the game. I mean, but then we go back to Lightning Rod. No. Wizard Scorn. No. Widow Scorn. No. Blade of the Corruptor. Not really. The Barrow Guard. Not really. A little bit. This had a good thing with Roar of the North and the revival, but its period in usage was very, very short-lived. It was not that strong. There were other revival things that were better. So now we're going to look at 2013. We have the Insert Coin, which was the joystick from the arcade Spec Ops. No, not that strong. Thanaphage. I'll let you guys read this for just a quick second. My cat had decided to come back upstairs and meow at the door. Despair, Bleeding Ravaged, Death Eater. This one, yes. This was free with a gold sale. This one was pretty strong, but nobody really ever seemed to use it. It wasn't very popular. It got strong the more PvP went on. However, hi bud. My cat's saying hello. Um, I don't really know that anybody wrote home about this one. Strong. I think if the game restarted today in its old way, people might say that Thanaphage is pay to win. But it just wasn't that popular. Frigga's Hope, no. Gamma Hammer, not really. Side Effects was really good once Pesty or the Scroll of Runamaroth showed up. However, um, it wasn't really that common. It could have been pay to win if more people realized the strength of this thing and teamed it up properly, but wasn't very pay to win. Might of Adeline, nope. Mercurial, not really. The Obliterator, I liked the Obliterator because of it being part of this Vindication set, but this really wasn't strong. That was not pay to win. Dragon's Foot. This one, with the Step of Shulao, here we go. Here is probably our first pay to win item of 2013. This was very strong, especially in certain groups. However, it did show up a bunch. Did it ever get cheap? No. Did it show up a lot that you had enough opportunity to get it? Yes. Still pay to win? Yeah. Yeah, that one comes close. Numbing Needle, whoops, wait a minute. Numbing Needle had something you don't see too often. Numbing Needle had this groggy. Nobody really used this. It wasn't anywhere. Skeptic, no. The Devour, I call the Devour the hardest working gear in Marvel Avengers Alliance history. There were so many things that I could do with the Devour. I loved it, but again, I don't necessarily think a lot of people found the Devourer to be that useful or used it to the point of, hey, I spent a lot of money for this, it's worth it. Articulated Edge, no. Cosmic Cardinal. I think this is a very important piece of gear in Marvel Avengers Alliance history. I think it never got cheap, and it never got freely available, even though it showed up a lot. I think this one could be one of the strongest contenders for pay to win. It wasn't super powerful, but what it enabled you to do and how it set up other teams to work even better, I would say yeah. So now we have two in 2013 that are really, really strong. Not the Sorcerer's Scepter, not the Multi-Shot, although I could build teams around the Multi-Shot. Not Thermite. Splinter of Night. I had a lot of conversations about the Splinter because it follows up against enemies with Dark Void. I had somebody tell me that they didn't believe that when you attack somebody and inflict a Dark Void on them, that it won't follow up immediately after because it caused Dark Void, so Dark Void was on the enemy. I proved it in one of my streams that it did it. There wasn't that much that was heavy with the tech attacks. This could be strong if there was a tech meta out there. So here's the thing. When I said that you can fix the meta if you know what you're doing, if there was a heavy, heavy tech meta out there, go get yourself a Splinter of Night. And then it's fixed. But you had to have gotten it during daily PvP or preseason 17 or the limited time that was available for 64 gold. No, I don't consider it pay to win. I consider this one pay to design a team later in time. The Neurotrope. Available a whole bunch of times. Never got cheap. Never left. This one, you got me. That one's a little on the pay to win side. So now we have three in 2013 where you could say we're pay to win. Master Sword. again, was very good if you knew how to build around it. Um, Mostly, and this was another one that could cause its own debuffs to follow up on. That, again, people didn't believe me that it could cause a debuff and then follow up on it. They thought I had to be there ahead of time. No. Not pay to win. ISO loaded scattergun eventually became available for not gold. And this was strong again for your pesty teams and your Scroll of Runemeroth teams, but never pay to win. Stainless Steel was not, Scroll was not, Butcher's Blade was not. Hard Knocks, it was decent, and it was good if you built teams around the whole Dark Bargain thing. Not really pay to win. Not the Oracle, not the Pneumatic Nailer, not the Headhunter, the Defender, not that Dart Gun, and that eventually was in the store. Not the Hand of Despair. I mean, things do despair. You didn't need that to do it. Certainly not the Kang set. Not the Disruption Array. Some people made some pretty good stuff with the Kazuri because of the red in the tooth. Not that popular. The Wrench, no. No. Nope. Not really. Nope. 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 Yes. Okay, so 2013, despite the fact that this was up several times, 2013 definitely had 4 pay-to-win items, where if you paid to have gold and got this item, you were setting yourself up for a great deal of victory and ease in PvP. It showed up a bunch of times, and it eventually was available from PvP rewards. However, if when it first dropped, you paid money to get 64 gold to get it, you were strong. Now, you could get Hulk to do the same thing, but this is a bit of a shortcut. So 2012 was fairly clean. 2013, looking a little bit worse for pay to win. So let's look at 2014. Not the Ecotech Blaster, not the Oni Breaker, but I had fun trying to make stuff around that. Not the Stake Thrower, but this is another one that I had fun trying to make. Yeah, I used that as a buff for other stuff. I thought that was something else for a second. No. No. Oh, the Rectifier. I and several people made really, really fun things around the Rectifier because of the energy feedback and what it does to shock. And when shock would trigger and move to other players and everything. But this was not pay to win. This was pay to use your brain. No. No. Whistling Steel was not bad. I maybe give this a 3 on the pay to win scale. It was free with the gold sale, and then it showed up later. This was never worth 96. This is ridiculous to think that this was worth 96. That's barely worth 64, if that. But yeah, there were some things you could do with Whistling Steel. E-Regulator, no. E-Regulator was a joke. Zero Day was fun. Flaming Post, no. The Raft Shank. Okay. Free with a gold sale, and then it was 84, and then it was 83. This thing, nothing is worth over 64 gold, in my opinion. Nothing should approach 100, nothing should approach 80. This was the combo breaker Shiv that was basically like Heroic Age Iron Fist. This was what I mean when I talk about finding things to counter a meta. If you didn't like the follow-up meta, or the join-in meta of like Star-Lord and Spider-Man Noir and Rocket Raccoon and everything, get yourself a Raft Shank, and it fixes it. Pay to win, yeah. I give this one about a 7 on the pay to win scale. It meant more to you if you were having problem with the meta that Raft Shank fixes. If you were not, then I would say Raft Shank drops to about a 5 on the pay to win scale. But there were certain people who could value a Raft Shank at a 9 or 10 very, very easily. Webbreaker, definitely not. The Neuro Purge. I loved me some Neuro Purge because of the despair and the remove buffs. This one was a little on the pay-to-win side. So, all right, let's be fair to this year so far, 2014. 2013 was a little bit of a bad year with 4. So we're going to say Rafshank is about a point. We'll say that's about a half. The Neuropurge is about another half, so we've got 1. Thorny, if you had the demon set, the Thorny essentially does so many things. It allows you to remove a piece of the demon set because you don't have it or don't want it, and insert this there, and it'll give you that debuff of the missing item. This again is one of those thinking man's ones. This wasn't pay to win, this was pay to think. I had fun with the Vibra Crescent. Not very common. There's that Hexenjäger I was talking about. Pulse Blade. No Mercy. This was good if you had the other pieces of the Apocalypse set. And then it got nerfed, actually. So I'm going to be generous and say 2014 had a total of 2. I'll be super generous and say there was 2 pay-to-win items in 2014. And now we will look at the combination of 2015-2016. This is maybe where things get a little bad. The Queller, no. Not on that. That's a customized. The Metaphysical Amplifier, no, they weren't the worst things about the Psychic set. The Adelin's Call, this was one of those summon sticks. No, people had learned their lesson by that point in time. After Heroes for Hire got nerfed. Wakandan Speedblade, no. Infernal Blazer, no. The Bow of Binding. This was the second one, I believe, after the Heroes for Hire. Not that strong. The Fulb. Okay. The Fulb was really, really, really strong against some of the endgame metas. This was a very, very strong piece of gear because of it removing debuffs, increasing strength, the cower, start combat with intangible, which was so important there at the end of the game. Alright, what year did the Fulb come out? Let's give it 1 for 2016. I'll give this a full 1. Hire a Hero was a 1 that eventually got nerfed to maybe like a 0.5. This came in very strong and they got nerfed. The Quit was super, super strong because of that. The Mind Control, the Possessed, the Cower, this was a very, very strong gun that not a lot of people used and not a lot of people picked up. I'll give that a full 1. So we're looking at 1 for 2016. We're looking at 1 for 2015 right at the end. The Lantern of Doom. I cannot deny the power of this thing, especially down the stretch when magic and dot damage was so important. So 2 for 2015, 1 for 2016. Witchhammer, you had to build around it, not that strong. The Grace Note, yeah, we got to give it a Grace Note. That enabled a lot of teams at the time. That was very good with Spider-Man Noir and Rocket. So 3 for 2015, 1 for 2016. Mandible, it was part of a larger set. Small Hadron Collider had its moment because no, I can't really give it much on this one. Supersymmetry, Planck Particles, no, that one's not really that strong enough to be called pay to win. The Relentless Rapier, yeah, I gotta give it to that one. So 4 in 2015. Scroll of Rudamaroth, 5. Ouch. Things are not looking good for 2015. The Isosaur Whisperer I loved. It was not a beloved item, though. It was not very strong. High-Tech Gauntlet. Munin's Eye, not to be confused with the Hugin's Eye. It just protected allies and granted determination to an ally that was hit by a range attack. Not really that good. Staff of Storms, no. The weather control device, very, very strong. 5 items in 2015. Okay, so I will admit 2015 was a bad year. 2016 was not. Granted, we didn't make it through all of 2016, but the trend of 2016 was not that bad. There was not really that much in 2016 that you could call pay to win. Well, okay, yeah, so the fall was, that's the one. I'm not going to count Hire a Hero because it was fixed so quickly. The quit was very, very, very limited. It could have been, if it was more widely adopted and had a better chance of being used on defense, it could be pay to win, but it looks like only 2 years out of the 4 years that the game was around did you really have to worry about true, full-on, pay-to-win items. Now, look at this. This is disappointing to read. So it was part of a gold sale bonus in May, but then half a year later, it showed up as a direct 128 gold. I gotta call them out on this and say that's greedy. 128 for this item, which essentially could be done via bringing Pesty. Now, it causes slowed on the agent, and then if you had slowed, you applied manipulated. That's the Pesty effect right here. So this is literally like bringing Pesty on a stick. But you needed to have Dizzy for generalized, and you needed to be weakened to cause the potential chance to stun. And of course, Soulfire removes buff, but you had other ways of doing that. If you wanted a Pesty that didn't affect your team, and you wanted Pesty in a toilet paper rod, yeah, you would get the Scroll of Runemeroth. Do I feel that it's 120? No. Do I feel that this one could have actually approached the 80-something gold amount, like the 83, 84? Yeah, this one was strong enough to be one of those few items that was worth over 60, but sorry, Playdom devs, 120-something for this. That's just greedy. And I think you knew it was so powerful, and I think you knew that a lot of people are like, man, I wish I had that. And this is one where I have to say they played on your desire for an item a little bit. But overall, with having a fairly clean 2012, a fairly clean 2016, really only 2 out of the 4 years was there a lot of pay-to-win items. Hitting 4 or 5, you're like, man, 4 or 5 isn't that bad for 12 months. When you look at the volume of items that come out during a year, 4 or 5 total isn't awful. But when you realize what it takes to get that amount of gold, if you're a free-to-play player, and you're literally putting like your life savings into one of these items, and then you get it, and then you've restarted your gold for about another half a year or so, these things have a lot of value to people. So, do I think the game was pay to win? No. Do I think the game had pay to win moments? Yes. I'm staring at the Lantern of Doom as one of them. We know the Grace Note and the Relentless Rapier. We know the power of them. We know the Scroll of Runemeroth and what it did. We know the Weather Control Device. But if you notice, you don't see the Mystic here. You don't see the Cube. Is it truly a pay-to-win game when you have things like the Mystic and the Cube that made so much PvP history, but you couldn't purchase them outright? Yes, you could eventually get the Cube and the Mystic on sale, but they weren't here because that's not how they were originally produced. You built them. The game gave you the opportunity to farm for things. It gave you the opportunity to build things that were just as strong as anything that you paid money for. And believe me, when you look at something like the Deathlock Fist, don't tell me the game was pay to win when this was an item you could pay for. Come on, like, who used a Deathlock Fist for fucking anything? So, that's my opinion on it. Do I think it was deeply flawed? No. Do I think it was um, buggy at times? I think it had its moments, but I mean, this wasn't a AAA title. This was a free-to-play game, and I think they really did the best they could, and I largely did not have issues with them, except for one or two bugs that just seemed to exist too long. Like Buff's not engaging in combat until after the first, even a micro action. Um, yeah, like the Black Knight being bugged for a while, Deadpool being unkillable for a while. It had its moments, but I think they fixed a lot of it, and I don't think they let a meta get too stale. If you use Overwatch as an example, there was what was called the GOATS meta, which was like um, three bulky characters and three support, and no real DPS and crowd control in there. You just played this ridiculously resilient meta that everybody said was too boring to watch on Twitch and everything. So they artificially broke apart the GOATS meta. They tried to introduce other metas to fix it, but it didn't work. I think the same thing happened with Playdom. If infiltrators got too strong, let's do a hypothetical situation. Tacticians get too strong because of their extra turns. Introduce good infiltrators. Good infiltrators get too strong. Introduce Quicksilver, literally one of the most game-changing characters of all time. Scrapper, Bisquick was the bane of infiltrators. And you're like, okay, I can't stand Quicksilver now. What do? Get a good protector. Get the Hugin's Eye to make melee cause drains. Get the escutcheon. Make melee attacks cause drains. Okay, well, Kurth can't be stunned, and Kurth is too powerful, and she blows stuff up. Okay, bring psychic attacks on her. Bring magic attacks. Bring bleeds. And eventually, yes, we did get the worthy weapons, but it literally was when the game was in its death throes, and you could say, well, that was too little too late. I would agree. The mighty weapons, or the worthy weapons, were a little too late to fight off Kurth. But Null was nerfed once or twice. Null was constantly being rebalanced for who he was. I just don't think any one meta survived in the game too long without a counter or something that ran, different to it. Triple Blaster Blow Up, that's one that was ridiculous. You brought the spare and Triple Blaster Blow Up. A good friend of mine in the game, JW, Jonathan Wyatt, he had the biggest issue with Triple Blaster Blow Up. He thought that was the biggest piece of shit ever. And once you did the spare, you had no choice of surviving that. You just couldn't. They fixed it relatively quickly. They didn't let that go on like 2 or 3 months. They took action after that PvP season was over where it was bad. Amazing Spider-Girl was fixed. Elsa was fixed. Hafe was eventually fixed. I mean, even Pesty was nerfed with his level 1 attack. They just generally kept the meta relatively organic. So to say that there was no concept of balance in the game, I definitely don't agree with that. As we looked at it with pay to win, there is some mild agreement to it. It all depends on how you think 5 items in a year is. Is it bad or is it average? I think it's a little bad. But we had plenty of years where there was like 1 or 2 items that really made a difference. So no, I don't think it was pay to win, although it had its moments. Do I think it was deeply flawed? No. But I think it had its moments. Do I think it was imbalanced? Absolutely not. No. Lots of frustrating moments throughout the years. Yeah. It had its moments. So, anyway, what do you guys think? What do you think were the most paid-to-win items in the game? And if you're going to post something, I want you to make sure you don't post something that wasn't pay-to-win. If you post the Cube or the Mystic, which were earnable by not paying gold, they're not going to count. I'm going to laugh at you. things like on the list that I was working about, what do you think were the most paid-to-win moments in Marvel Avengers Alliance history from 2012 to 2016? I'm really interested in what you guys have to say. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.